if you're coming off a COBRA plan, or after 3 or 6 months or whatever the waiting period is. Okay, so we had these in place because government dropped the ball. In 10 other states, we had brilliant guaranteed issue individual mandates. Let me give you an example. The state of Ohio. The state of Ohio passed a law and said that if you want to sell health insurance coverage here, Mr. Insurance Company, you have to offer once a year an open enrollment period for all sick people. No matter how sick they are, you must give them the same coverage you would give someone who's not sick, with no questions asked about pre-existing conditions. And you must do that to 4% of your block of business, or you cannot sell your plan in this state. Now, there are 20 carriers who decided to choose to sell health insurance in Ohio. And every February, March, or April, depending on what the insurance commissioner says, they open their books and the sick people come. Did you know that they have never maxed out all 4% of every company in all the years they've done it? They've never even gotten close. We could have taken that idea and spread that across the country. We didn't do that. You know what we did? We took the worst healthcare idea in American history, what took place in Massachusetts. That's what we did. You know, Mitt Romney likes to say 98% of the people were insured under that plan, and we're proud of that, right? Do you know half of them are on your tax time? Half of them are on Medicaid. Half. You know, he says that it was supposed to cost $880 million. That's a target projected cost. You know what it cost this year? $8.6 billion. Did you know you're paying for it? The Fed's been bailing out Massachusetts for years, since they implemented ObamaCare. They also like to say that they've got 98% of their insured and everybody's got access to care. You know what the waiting period is right now to see a doctor in Massachusetts? 47 days. Imagine a rash in 47 days with no treatment. Okay? So we could have taken a better idea, like what happened in Ohio, and spread it across the country. We didn't. We took what happened in Massachusetts. And Mitt Romney likes to say, well, if the president would just ask me, I could have told him what we did wrong, but he never asked me. Did you know that his advisors were in the White House helping Barack Obama design Obamacare? Mitt Romney's advisors. It's a true story. So, we know how to fix pre-existing conditions, we know about the risk pools, we know of more intelligent ideas to solve pre-existing conditions, and we know it can be fixed with one sentence. Now, I want you to know why health insurance costs so much money. Barack Obama likes to say it's because the health insurance companies are evil, and they want to rack up your premiums, they want to drop your coverage when you get sick, et cetera, et cetera. Go back to 1979. In 1979, there were a total of 279 mandates placed on every health insurance company in this country. And what those mandates would say, if you sell health insurance in this state, you got to cover cancer. All right, that makes sense to us. That's why we're in the business. You got to cover this procedure, that procedure. They were all medically necessary. Fast forward, post-Obamacare, who would like to guess how many mandates have been placed on health insurance companies since then? 2,100 mandates. And a lot of them are not medically necessary. Now, 2,100 sounds like a lot. It looks like a lot, too. These are the mandates on every health insurance company in this country since 1979. And many of them are not medically necessary. For instance, hair plugs. Why are we paying for Joe Biden's hair plugs? And if we paid for it, we got ripped off. What else? Health club memberships. In vitro fertilization. Did you know that right here in Illinois, your premiums are drastically higher because you have to pay for infertility? Do you know that? Even if you don't have the proper plumbing below your navel to even have a child, you got to pay for infertility because our big-hearted liberal legislators here thought that would be fair. And the list goes on, besides hair clubs. Health club memberships. I covered hair prosthesis. It's just endless. It goes on and on and on. Massage therapists. Why? Why do I need a massage? Why should everybody pay higher for a massage therapist? Athletic trainer. Oh, and in California, where there's only 6 carriers left, Do you know that every one of the universities, including UC Berkeley, mandates on their policies that the insurance company has to pay to turn your Audi into an innie, and I don't mean your belly button? Sexual reassignment surgery is a mandated covered expense, and it drives up premiums for everybody else. There's a video of a woman on YouTube, she's a small business owner from California, practically screaming at a healthcare town hall because she's got 6 carriers left to choose from, even though there are 1,300 health insurance companies in the country. Because when these liberal legislators do these things, the insurance companies leave the state. And they don't have any other options but the 6 that are left. And when the 6 are left, guess what they can do? Raise prices, because now they have a monopoly, right? There are laws that were passed so many years ago that are so archaic that are preventing our insurance companies from selling across state lines today. Google the McCarran-Ferguson Act of 1946. This is an archaic law that prevents insurance companies not only from selling health insurance across state lines, but property casualty insurance and other things. So liberal legislators have put in place for decades laws that impede the ability to lower premiums by impeding competition. And they've done it with Obamacare. Obamacare is the biggest impeder of competition. They've also not included any tort reform in Obamacare. I love selling health insurance in Texas under Governor Perry. You know why? Because it's so cheap. The same products are so cheap. Because Governor Perry put in place tort reform, and it brought down health insurance premiums across the board. But they didn't put any tort reform in Obamacare. You know why? I kind of scratched my head when I first read the legislation. Why did they put tort reform in here? And I waited for a while to try and figure out the reason, and then Howard Dean screamed the answer to me like he screams everything else. You know what Howard Dean said? Well, we were going to put that in, but we didn't want to piss off the trial lawyers. That's why there's no tort reform. Thanks to the Democrat, Howard Dean gave us the truth. Now, right now there is a war on women, supposedly, that our friends on the left, of which I have none, have been promulgating, that the GOP is pushing, that there's a war on women. Okay? I want you to understand, and our GOP leaders, especially John Boehner, have no idea how to respond to these things. They're just terrible at anti-messaging, counter-messaging. So for all of you who've heard the war on women, I'd like to replace it with the war on seniors. Because there is a war on seniors going on right now. The left put together a commercial, and you've probably seen it, of a nice-looking man that kind of looks like Paul Ryan, and he's wheeling an old lady, grandma, off a cliff, right? I want you to know that if you look really close, the guy who's pushing grandma off the cliff looks a lot more like Alfred E. Newman, because Barack Obama has already waged a war on seniors in this country. You've heard Paul Ryan say that Obamacare cuts $500 billion from Medicare, right, to fund the Medicaid entitlements. I'd like you to replace that number with $4.95 trillion. Because the chief Medicare actuary, Richard Foster, did an assessment of Obamacare. You will find this in a Wall Street Journal article, the best place to look at it, or you can find it on my blog, which is truthaboutobamacare.com. There's a link to Richard Foster's assessment. Who's Richard Foster? Is he a right-wing blogger? Is he a left-wing blogger? You know who he is? He's a chief Medicare actuary, as high as you can go. And the chief Medicare actuary said it'll cut $4.95 trillion. But it's far worse than that for our seniors. Cutting $4.95 trillion will do nothing but ration care for our seniors. But in his report, he states one more thing that's far more detrimental. The Obamacare legislation, according to the chief Medicare actuary, will reduce the amount of money, the percentage of reimbursement that the government currently pays to doctors who still take Medicare to less than what they currently pay for Medicaid. Do you know doctors in Illinois who still take Medicaid haven't been paid in up to 2 years? So, why is that really bad for our seniors? The American Academy of Cardiology did a study in 2005, and they wanted to determine the survival rate of people who have surgery on Medicaid compared to people who hold a private health insurance policy. And in 2005, the shocking results were that you were 50% more likely to die after surgery on Medicaid than you were with private health insurance. Why? Because they weren't getting paid, these doctors. That means you aren't getting any follow-up therapy, no follow-up treatment. So as soon as that study came out, government, oh, we can't let that stand. This is our Medicaid program. We got to put more big government on that and get it fixed. Fast forward 4 years to 2009. The University of Virginia does a follow-up study. They find out that in 2009, you are now 97% more likely to die after surgery on Medicaid than you are if you have private health insurance. Sarah Palin said death panel and she was crucified for it. In reality, she was right. Now understand, this is before we add 25 million more people onto our already bankrupt Medicaid rolls. Because remember what Obama did. They raised the qualifications for federal poverty level to get on Medicaid 400% higher, so that families making $90,000 a year can qualify for Medicaid. So that the few, the proud, the 53% get to pay up to half their health insurance premiums. So if we're going to flood our Medicaid rolls with 25 million more people, we've got the Mayo Clinic in Arizona already refusing to take Medicare patients, and we're going to reduce the reimbursement ratio that we pay doctors who take Medicare today to less than what we pay them on Medicaid. Is that not one gigantic death panel? Yes or no? Yes. And none of this you're hearing about anywhere in the media. I want you to look up the references I've mentioned. Lastly, the Independent Payment Advisory Board. I want you to understand how that presents a huge danger to our nation's seniors. They are commissioned in the next 10 years to cut $500 billion from Medicare, and they are given the authority to do so without the approval of Congress. In fact, if they don't make those cuts, it falls to one person to make them. Do you know who that person is? Kathleen Supercilious. She gets to make the decision. You think she's going to make rational decisions? See, before the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is being staffed this year with unelected bureaucrats, who the president himself will confirm only, who make these decisions arbitrarily of Congress. Before that, we had MedPAC. And what MedPAC would do, the Medicare Advisory Board, is recommend cuts to Medicare or adjustments to our Medicare program, and that it would have to pass Congress before those went in. The reason they call it the Independent Payment Advisory Board is because they don't have to deal with Congress. They can make whatever cuts they want to make arbitrary of Congress. That is tyranny. And it puts our seniors at great danger. Last is religious freedom. The war on women is not about contraception. It is about a fundamental violation of our First Amendment rights. 400 Catholic organizations are now pushing back against Obamacare because of the fact that it forces them to cover abortions. And remember, we were promised that Obamacare will not pay for abortions. Do you know why it pays for it now? Because the legislation allows Kathleen Supercilious to write rules all day long by herself. And one of the rules she wrote was on August 1st, 2011. And that rule stated that all health insurance companies now must provide coverage for abortion. Now, Michelle Bachmann said this during one of the GOP debates. Immediately, the communist news network, CNN, decided to put out a spin that Michelle Bachmann is cuckoo, crazy, she's lying. RU 486 is not in the legislation. That's true. You know what is? Ella and Plan B. They're both morning after abortion pills. So she wasn't lying. And in fact, her and Steve King were not lying. And this really ticks me off. Is Congressman Schilling still here? Good, I can hammer him. This is our role as Tea Party leaders and Tea Party patriots is to hold our elected officials accountable. Remember, before we won our 768 seats nationwide in November 2010, King and Bachmann, Congressman Steve King and Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, were screaming on every channel they could that, hey, we now control the purse. We control spending in Congress. So let's act like it. When House Joint Resolution 48 comes up, continue Resolution 6 to 7, I want you to sign this document. I want you to stand with me, you new Tea Party reps, and I want you to make sure that when we send funding over to the Senate, we send funding only for the normal functions